What a beauty she is. This, of course, is the magnificent Colnago C68. And many of you watched my full build video over at Ride 24/7 the other day, link down below and up above just in case you missed it. But in today's video, I will share my first ride impressions after 2 rides. But before that, let's go through the details of this build and explain why I put Shimano Ultegra on an Italian frame, because lots and lots of you had questions around that choice. So let's dive in. My decision to put the brand new Shimano Ultegra 12-speed group set on a top-end Italian frame, a Colnago no less, has caused quite a stir, quite an emotional reaction in the comment section of my full build video on this bike. And why have I put the group set on this frame? Because I wanted to, and I had the opportunity to do it. There are no rules around what group set you put on which frame. You're free to put any group set on any frame you want. I don't follow this idea that an Italian frame should have an Italian group set at all. Personally, I think it's all nonsense. And yes, there's no doubting that Campag Super Record EPS is a lovely group set, and I rode it on a Bianchi Specialissima last year, linked that down below. It is a ruddy, expensive group set, and that's the problem with Campag. Yes, Super Record is a lovely group set, but the price is eye-watering, and there is no cheaper, more affordable version of that EPS group set, whereas Shimano and SRAM both have 3 levels of electronic group sets. The frame really is stunning in real life, and a chance to appreciate the many details and the shaping of the frame, and also how much it changed from the previous C64. And the direction it has gone in has definitely ruffled some feathers, but I think it's a natural move for the company and the right move for the company. The C64 before it was a glorious frame with that tube and lug appearance that goes right back to the 90s with the C40, the granddaddy to the whole C series we have now. But through the C64 and the C60 and the C59 before it, they really push that tube and lug design as much as they can. And yes, they could have carried on tweaking and refining it over the next few years, but I think a major ground-up redesign to modernise the frame for the next era of cycling was definitely needed. And I do think this is a worthy direction for the C series to go in. They kept the same fundamental manufacturing method of using sections of frame bonded together, giving really nice precise control over geometry and fit, and still manufactured in Italy as well, which is a real nice feature. But giving it a really modern, really sleek, really fast appearance, and definitely looks good alongside more modern alternatives like company's own V3 RS, Tarmac SL7, Trek and Monda, and many others, where the old C64 was looking a bit traditional, a bit conservative, perhaps something your old man would ride, but probably not something a younger person, I know I'm not young anymore, might aspire to ride and to own. And with all the cables and hoses contained within the fork, the frame and the handlebar, it's a very clean, uncluttered, unmessy looking bike around the front, as you can see. We have the company's own aero handlebar, a one-piece carbon fibre handlebar and stem. The cable routing, although fairly tricky for Dave, the mechanic at Ride 24/7 to set up, does work really well, and it's a really sensible solution. There are differing approaches to internal cable routing, some good and some bad. But this one has the cables going inside the stem and in the front of the stereo tube, so you have a normal round stereo tube, so no funky stereo tube shape, and it does work really well. There's no rattling, no restriction on handlebar movement, so it does work really well, and you have normal stereo tube, so hopefully no recalls down the line. One small issue so far based on 2 rides is while we have a lovely carbon fibre state-of-the-art frame and handlebar, the computer mount is a bit of an afterthought in my opinion. It's just a plastic injection molded design with a GoPro mount for my computer there. And I had to do the bolt up really, really tight to stop it wobbling around. So that could have been done with a bit of 3D printing perhaps, just to give it a more high-end, kind of high caliber finish to what is a very expensive high-end frame. But having done the bolt up really tight, it's okay now, but that I think could have been improved and maybe a bit more aero as well. From this side of the bike, you can see how they have changed the frame quite drastically from the old C64. Not only are the distinctive lugs gone, but we also have an aero-shaped down tube, and that's a big departure. We don't have that very distinctive tube profile that goes right back to the C40. So we now have a D-shaped truncated profile for better aero, and they're taking the size off up there as well. And it's a nice looking tube. Also an aero seat tube, aero seat post, the same as a V3 RS, with a small recess there for the Colnago logo, and the internal seat bolt goes in the top of the tube there. And no drop rear stays, I'm pleased to report. They go right to the top of the top tube there. Nice chunky oversized chain stays, quite a lot of tire clearance there, and we have the T47 bottom bracket, so an oversized threaded bottom bracket developed by Chris King and Argonaut Cycles a few years ago. Similar to a thread fit 82.5 that Colnago developed a few years ago, same system basically, but T47 being widely adopted by other bike manufacturers like Trek, so it makes sense to go down that route. Another nice detail on this bike, and something you definitely want on a high-end bike, is the new Ceramic Speed SLT headset bearings. These are a solid grease bearing, so there's no kind of normal grease in there, it's a solid grease, and apparently it's meant to last a very, very long time, but time will tell on that one. Definitely feels very, very smooth so far, so first impressions are good. Just to give you some more details on the build, I have a 5236 chainset on the front and an 1130 cassette on the back. Unfortunately, I have 170 crank arms, not my usual 172.5 due to supply issues, so that might be interesting, but a nice little fun comparison on short cranks versus longer cranks for an upcoming video. 140, 160 disc brakes. And then for the wheels, I've also gone for the new Ultegra C36 carbon fibre clincher wheels. They do a C50 as well, and a C50 might be a more natural choice, more aero, but I thought the shallow rim profile looked good on a frame like this, and so far I think my decision has been a good one. I've gone for the brand new Michelin Power Cup 28mm wide clincher tyres. The tubeless ones aren't ready yet, so I'm using these with inner tubes. I'm using the brand new, well not so brand new actually, Pirelli Smart Tubes. I know I'm a real advocate of tubeless, and I will be tubeless on this eventually, but I was keen to try new tyres and also try the Pirelli Smart Tubes to see what they're like and what the fuss is all about. So stay tuned for a full review on the tyres and inner tubes very soon. But these rims, they use a hooked B profile, so they are clincher tyre and tubeless compatible as well. A high-end frame needs a high-end saddle, naturally, so I've gone for the 3D printed Physique saddle with carbon fibre rails, so very neat. And then my trusty Silka saddlebag there with spare tubes and other bits and bobs that I need. And then, quite controversially perhaps, I've gone for white bar tape, and it caused quite a stir in the comment section, which I wasn't expecting, to be honest. Now, back in the day when I used to race bikes quite a lot living in London, white bar tape and white saddles was the pro look. It had downsides in terms of keeping it clean, but it looked absolutely fresh as you like. But these days I'm more sensible as I'm getting older, so I tend to go for black bar tape and black saddles. But my reason behind the white bar tape is because we have quite a lot of white on the frame, contrasting with the black at the back of it, and I felt like some white on the handlebar would just make the bike really pop and just elevate it to another level. And I hope you'll agree, it does work really well. Unfortunately, I don't have a white saddle because they don't make these in white. They do an ivory white, but not an actual white. And yes, I really should have a matching white saddle to white bar tape, but I think I can get away with it. And yes, the downside of white bar tape is keeping it clean, but just wash it on a regular basis. But for now, I think the white bar tape, along with the white frame, looks absolutely fantastic. There is one thing I would change on the frame, and it's a real personal one, so let me know what you think down below, is the gloss black Colnago logo on the down tube. I think if that white, so it really stood out on the frame, I think it would look absolutely amazing. Because as it is right now, it gets sort of lost in the matte black of the down tube. Doesn't stand out, doesn't contrast as much as a C68 on the top tube. But let me know what you think of that down below. We of course have the Italian flag on the seat tube. That is a requirement on all Italian frames. Just to remind you where the frame was designed, and in this case, made as well. Right, before I go for a ride and share my first ride impressions with you, I need to reveal the weight of the bike because lots of you had questions on my full build video the other day. So this bike, a size 51, which is roughly a 56, without the computer mount, without the saddlebag, and without pedals, but with a carbon fibre cage, weighs, drum roll please, 7.44 kilograms. So that's a pretty decent weight for this build, I think. Ultegra definitely is a bit heavier than Dual Race, and the wheels and the tyres and the tubes aren't as light as it could be. So I think you could get down to 7 kilos. I do have some MV 2.3s at home, which I might sling in here to see how much weight they take off the full build. So definitely room for improvement, but I don't think 7.4 is too shabby. But what's it like out on the open road? The first word that comes to my mind riding a brand new bike is sensational, or dreamy, or just sublime. Such a lovely bike to ride. It is exceptional. Okay, that's more than one word, but there are so many words that describe this new bike. And the speed of this bike is fantastic as well. It is so quick. On my first proper ride, about 85 kilometers, so rolling routes, some hills, the bike absolutely flew, and I averaged just under 32k an hour. Absolutely stomped around the course, was totally broken when I got back, but smiling from ear to ear for the speed that the bike enabled. Even though it's not super light or super aero, it is super quick. Goodness me, maybe it's that new bike feeling, but this bike is just so intoxicatingly fast. I must admit, I've always had a soft spot for the Colnago C series, the previous C64, the C60, the C59 and the C50, and of course the C40, the granddaddy of this series of race bikes. But this new bike marks a departure in numerous ways, and out here on my local roads, that departure is felt by a much sharper, stiffer, faster feeling bike than the previous C64. The C64 was a lovely, smooth, all-day Grand Tour style bike. This one still has the comfort, but the stiffness has been ramped up loads over the old bike. This new bike should feel so much sharper, more laser focused and much stiffer through the front end, the head tube, the handlebar, and also through the bottom bracket when you're stamping on the pedals up the climbs. Admittedly, I haven't ridden a C64 in the identical specification to this bike, group set, wheels and tyres, so I do have to take that into consideration as well. But even bearing that in mind, this new bike feels very different to the old bike. And is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, time will tell, I think. Ride quality and comfort was definitely a hallmark of the previous C64, and this new bike still has good comfort, and on some road surfaces it is silky smooth. But on a slightly coarser tarmac where it's broken up at the edges, there is a bit more feedback coming through the contact points. But I will reserve judgment because different wheels, new wheels to me, new tyres. I'm using those new Pirelli smart tubes as well. So in other words, quite a few products I'm not used to yet. So I might swap the wheels and put some other wheels and tyres that I'm familiar with and see how smoothness then works out. For reference, 28mm wide Michelin Power Cup tyres with 60 psi, more or less at front and rear. So wide tyres, low pressures, but they're smart tubes, not the tubeless I'm more used to. Okay, let's see how it climbs. No shortage of climb where I live right now. Loads of steep gradients to put the bike through its paces. So let's dig in and see what we've got. And unsurprisingly, it climbs extremely well. It's light, not super light, at 7.4 kilograms on the scales, but there's loads of stiffness from the frame, the bottom bracket, the handlebar, and when you crank out the power, it feels so efficient, like every watt is going into forward motion. I've already set some PBs on local climbs on this bike, so weight clearly isn't everything when it comes to climbing fast. Right, there we are guys, my first ride and a full detailed breakdown of this new Colnago C68 with Shimano Ultegra. Loads more videos in the pipeline over the next few weeks and months, so make sure you are subscribed to our channel by hitting that red button down below if you want to follow my progress with the bike, and also some reviews of the frame, the group set, the wheels and tyres and other bits and bobs, and I might change some parts on it over the next few weeks as well. Got any questions, any feedback, any reaction, do put them down below in the comment section. I try and read all your comments and reply to as many as I can when I can. So it really means a lot to me when you do comment down below. But that's all for today. Don't forget to watch my full build on this bike if you haven't seen it yet, link right there, and subscribe by hitting the button right here. But that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you all again very soon.